got very creative in how I obtained food. I didn't like eating in front of people. I was always thinking about what I looked like, and it was this horrible mind game that I went through. Gained back more weight than I had lost. I would order multiple drinks to go with all the food I was ordering. Then they would think, oh, he's getting all this food for 3 people. Because that was my character. That's what I would do. I would lash out at people. I would get angry. The thing that I started to notice first was clear thinking, being able to control my emotions.
Hi everybody, Dr. Joan Ifland here. Thanks so much for joining me with these conversations about how to recover from processed food. And I have an amazing guest with me today. His name is Mike Henry. I have known him for 3.5 years. We've been shoulder to shoulder in the battle with processed food addiction, and he's going to lift you up, give you hope, tell you how he did it. But you are looking at a rare person, a person who has thoroughly conquered processed food addiction. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Joan. Good to see you again.
Oh, ditto. So let's start off with the before and after. You found recovery from processed food addiction 3.5 years ago. What was happening before that?
Well, before that, I didn't know I had an addiction to processed foods. I just thought I was an overeater. And for decades, I spent time going through all kinds of diets that just about probably most people understand. Most people have been through. But it wasn't just, and I did really well on diets. You name it, I tried it, and I would do really well. I was very good at losing weight. And because that was always my goal, was just to lose weight, and I could do really well, and I did it. But then once I'd stopped the program and stopped starving myself or stopped drinking whatever it was, then within a couple of months, I would put the weight back. It would start coming back, and it would just come back. And usually, I would gain back more weight than I had lost.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
And we're talking in well over the 100-pound range of what I used to go up and down. But what bothered me the most, particularly the last couple of years before I found the ARC, was that it was the mental things that were going on inside my mind, where just the shame of what my body looked like, the constant thought of like, well, I'm going to start next week. I'm going to get it right this time. And I was constantly thinking about that. If I was awake and I wasn't actively engaged in some sort of activity, I was thinking about losing weight. I was thinking about my body. But that day never came. I hated seeing myself in the mirror. If I walked past like a large, glass window, and I wouldn't want to look at it. I wouldn't want to see myself. It was constant. I didn't know how constant it was until I started looking into processed food addiction. Then I started to realize, like, wow, like I'm always thinking about this. And it was like almost nauseating.
I'm just so glad you're leading with this topic. There are two pieces. One, people are thinking about food all the time, but the other thing is they're thinking about their body shape all the time. Mm-hmm. And when people get off the processed foods and they get into a nurturing, accepting environment, and they do lose the weight, they love being able to use their brain for other things. Yeah.
And talk about using your brain. I got very creative in how I obtained food, because one of the issues I had was I didn't like eating in front of people. Mm-hmm. Because I was always thinking about what I look like, and if people see me eating, and then they'll make that connection. And it was this horrible mind game that I went through. And I was even doing things like I would leave work, and on my way home, I would stop for fast food, and I would order multiple drinks to go with all the food I was ordering, because I was afraid that people working there would know the food was for me. So if I asked for 2 or 3 beverages, then they would think, oh, he's getting all this food for 3 people or 2
people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even drink the beverage. I would just throw them out. I didn't want them.
Oh, Mike, you can't imagine how many people have that story. Yeah. And they pull up to the window and they say, oh, my whole family's going to just love having this, and
Yeah.
getting this
Yeah.
to other people. And the things that people do, like they wouldn't go to the same grocery store for their binge food. They would rotate grocery stores so that nobody would know
Yeah.
how often they were buying these vast quantities of processed foods. People don't, there's a phrase, it's in a Robert Frost poem. The fog comes in on little cat feet. This addiction comes in on little cat feet, and it's kind of like wrecked your life before you even know it. And
Yeah.
you don't even remember what life was like before you had this insanity going on in your head. Do you now really believe, let me ask you this question, that this whole thing was not your fault?
Oh yeah, because I didn't know. I like 20 years or 30 years ago when I used tobacco, like a smoker, I knew before the first day I ever had a cigarette, I knew it was addictive. I knew it could cause lung cancer. I knew all the things that it could do to you. In fact, when I was in high school, I was the chairman of the Great American Smokeout one year for my high school. But then after high school, I started, and I knew how bad it was. I started smoking. But with processed foods, I had no idea that they were that salt and high fat and or high fat dairy and different food substances in our food supply were addictive. I had absolutely no idea, or how addictive sugar was. I didn't know that. No one, I had never heard that. I heard about
Yeah,
alcohol and tobacco and
yeah,
gambling and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, you're making such a good point. It's a point that I like to bring up at every opportunity and then belabor ad nauseum, which is this all started when the tobacco industry
Mm.
bought Kraft, Nabisco, and General Foods in the mid 1980s. R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris bought Kraft, Nabisco, and General Foods. They bought over 10% of the American food market in 3 years. And all you have to do to understand what happened to us is ask, well, why would people who make their living off of addicting us to these horrible, disgusting products called cigarettes, why would they move into processed foods? Well, they just saw this enormous opportunity. They had high
Mhm.
fructose corn syrup, so that a cheap sweetener that's highly addictive, it just goes through the body like corn alcohol, and off they went. So yes, so you're making exactly the right point. Nobody ever called any of us up and said, boy, would you like to have your head filled with food and body shape obsession?
Mhm.
I never got that call, did you?
No,
No.
no,
So,
no.
I mean,
I
I think
never heard sugar was addictive. I didn't know that.
no, very, very well hidden, very well hidden. So as you've grasped that, as because we educate on this a lot, I mean, did you feel a really big shift from this is somehow my fault, I'm defective, I'm a failure, over to, oh, this was done to me?
Yeah,
Was that
it
a
was a
big
big,
shift for you?
it was a big leap. It was a really big leap for me, and when it was just, it was also logical to me. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know. I mean, I knew I would gain weight if I overate. That I knew, but I didn't know I couldn't stop the eating, or I couldn't, when I went off of a diet, I couldn't prevent myself from getting back into the bad habits because of an addiction. That I didn't know, and
Right, right.
that was a huge step, and it kind of took some pressure off. It didn't make life suddenly easier, but it put my brain, it put my mind in a better position of like, oh, okay, I've got this. This is an addiction now. I'm going to be dealing with addiction. I'm not going into a diet program to lose weight here. I need to
Mm,
retrain the way I think about food. I need to realize this wasn't my fault to begin with. And then I can start doing the work to overcome it.
okay. So 3.5 years ago, you came into our online community, the ARC. What was it like, and how was it different from anything you tried before?
Well, I was a bit skeptical at first, and I'd say because I started because of my wife. My wife first found out about the ARC and about you, and she started telling me about it, and she was very excited about it. and I'm always a skeptical person to begin with, and I'd been through so many programs, but she
gosh.
was excited about it, but it was a little excited in a different way, where and she started sharing things with me that she had seen about you, read about you, and things that you were saying, and things started to make sense to me. I'm like, okay, this does seem a little bit different,
Mm.
and getting into the online community with the Zoom chats, that was a little strange to me. Um, uh, it was interesting meeting people from around the world because at the time, we were living here in China, and it was interesting to meet people from, because of time zones. We were mostly meeting with people from Europe and Africa and Australia, and that was interesting. But it was a little strange at first, about because I was expecting like a 12-step program and how people emote um, and I wasn't used to that. But in the arc, in the chats, and like, oh, these are people that are just talking. They're talking about what they're going through, how their day was, and about their recovery. And the thing that was that it took me a little while to realize was there were people in there that I didn't really connect with. I'm like, they were women at different ages and married with children. My wife and I don't have children, and I didn't connect to a lot of that. Like, they weren't really people that I think I would be friends with, not because they were unpleasant, just because our paths normally,
They weren't enough like you.
yeah, our paths
No.
wouldn't normally cross. And but then when I started to realize, when I'm listening to what people were saying about what they were going through, I realized, oh, now there's a connection. There's a connection, to this, mom of, 4 kids in Iowa, who's having issues with the food in her house. And like, okay, and how she reacts to it, that I could connect to.
Yeah, I'm having that phenomenon too. I relate to that. I resonate with that. You got food in
Yes.
your house, as Chef AJ says, if it's in your house, it's in your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you found the common ground.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely.
Yeah. And then, did you get that incredible feeling? Oh, I'm not the only one. And oh, there might be something to do about this.
Yeah. Well, just seeing how many people were in the ark, I realized I'm not the only one. But
Yeah.
when people started talking about just not necessarily their story, like you and I have been doing here today, just hearing their day-to-day routines and day-to-day thoughts and day-to-day things that they go through, I'm like, oh yeah, I do that too. Yeah, I have those feelings, or I've had those thoughts too, or I've struggled with that. And the particulars may not be exactly the same, but what's going on inside the mind was the same.
Yeah.
And hearing, especially people who had been in the program for a while, hearing what they were doing to manage their stress and triggers, and I'm like, oh, well, that's not too hard. I think I can try
That's
that.
not
I can
too
do
hard.
something like that.
Okay, so what did you stop doing and what did you start doing? Gradually, slowly over the months.
Well, my wife and I did it together. We started on the September the 8th in 2020. We started this together, and we kind of did things a little differently. I'm more of a black and white kind of person when I make up my mind about something. So I stopped consuming anything that was processed. I I just didn't eat anything that was processed, and that was. But my wife her approach was a little different. Hers was, she got rid of a few things, but she said, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. I'm just, when this runs out, I'm not going to buy anymore. When that
Right.
is gone, I'm not going to buy any more of that. And that was fine. It didn't bother me. I was glad that she was in control of what she was doing, and she was positive about it, and didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel pressured that she had to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we talk about in the arc. That's where she got the idea that there wasn't a rush. She didn't have to suddenly, turn her life upside
You have
down.
all the time in the world.
And
Yeah.
but with almost everything, what happened was, it was before the things ran out. She's like, I don't want this anymore, and she either donated it or she got rid of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what did you notice? What changes in your person, your head, your body, your heart, your soul? your behaviors, your thoughts? What changed?
Well, the main thing that I started to notice first was clear thinking, um, and being able to control my emotions. I mean, it wasn't right away. It wasn't the first day, but like I'm talking about within months of getting these substances out of my body, that I started to have clear thinking. My memory was much better. Um,
Yep.
and one of the things that happened to me was anger. I would easily get irritated at things. And I'm not saying it stopped overnight, but there was one particular issue was when we moved cities within China, and moving is a stressful situation for anybody. But when
Yep.
you're in China and you do it, it's even more stressful because of language barriers and cultural differences, and it was really stressful. The day we arrived in a new city here in the south, in Shenzhen, we went out to a shopping mall, and it was an older mall that was under renovation, and we were unfamiliar with it, and we got separated in the mall,
Oh
and I
dear.
and I got upset. I got worried, like I don't know where my wife is. I can't find her. There was a lot of construction workers
Oh,
in the
oh,
building, and I started to panic. But when I saw her, when I finally found her, I was relieved. I wanted to yell. I wanted to show my anger and how upset I was. And I was trying to get angry at her, but I couldn't.
but you
And
couldn't. Oh
when
my
I,
gosh, it's such a great
reflected,
story.
when I reflected on it, the best way I can describe it is I felt like I had a wet match. I'm trying to light a wet match, and it just wouldn't light. And I was trying to get it going because that was my character. That's what I would do. I would lash out at people. I would get
Oh,
angry,
I
but I
love
just
this. I
couldn't
love
do it.
this. Yep.
And she could see I was upset, and she said, "Why didn't you call me?" And it's true. We had cell phones. I could have easily called her on the cell phone, but I was so upset because I couldn't even think about that because my brain wasn't working. The frontal lobe, it was upset.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't quite working. But then when I saw her that immediately I calmed down and I could think. I didn't go into that mode of lashing out and being angry
Yes, yes.
and
So
throwing my anger on somebody else.
this is always at the top of my own personal list. I had no idea that processed foods artificially increase adrenaline levels in the body. So we're in this artificial state of anger and fear, but just because we have a lot of cortisol in our body. And when that drops off, the phrase I remember from 28 years ago when I started into this field, I talked to people one on one, and particularly the moms would say, I know I should have had a meltdown right there and I didn't have it. It's not just released from the eating, from the obsessive thinking about food and body, it's also released from these chemically induced behaviors. I have to say, I was ashamed of my behavior again and again. So this is it's like getting out of prison.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, your behaviors, your feelings. It's like the processed food industry, tobacco in disguise, came in and did the same thing with processed foods they did with cigarettes. They made cigarettes sexy. Cigarettes are disgusting. They're like the most anti sexy thing out there. And processed foods are delicious and delightful and they're inexpensive. No, they are killing us, but they're killing us. They're taking our lives away long before they kill us because we don't have our beautiful thoughts and our beautiful feelings. Oh, Mike, what happened next?
What happened next? Well, there were a lot of physical changes. I mean, I didn't just lose weight, but I, I was in my late 50s, and I was I was getting up in the morning. I was always achy and sore, and I just said, "Well, this is
Mhm.
what it's like getting old." But I don't remember my parents being like that. Maybe they were, and they just never told me because I didn't see them when they got up in the morning.
Yeah.
So I just assumed this is what people go through. You're achy and sore in the morning, and falling asleep during the day, but over time, over the first few months, a lot of those pains and aches went away, and I'm like, oh, my feet don't have to feel sore in the morning. My knees don't have to feel sore in the morning, it was, and I wasn't doing any great exercises or movement or anything. I wasn't doing yoga or stretching or anything like that. It just, I'm like, oh, there's, and in the back of my mind, I had read, because I was reading your book, and I noticed that it's like, well, processed foods cause inflammation, and then that's what leads to a lot of pain, is the inflammation in joints and in the muscles. And it was,
how about and yeah, the joint pain thing is huge. And they go to the doctor says, well, your knees hurt, you're getting old, you're 29 now. It's just like, no, that is not what's going on.
yeah.
The joint pain is it's a pandemic. And boy, you get off the processed foods within a day, within 4 days, within a week, within 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It's just plain old gone. And here you are, you go to your professional and they say, well, you're going to have to be on this pain medication for the rest of your life. It's just no way around it. Boom, it's gone. So exciting.
Yeah, I used to buy the painkillers in the large bottles from Costco.
Yeah.
And it was maybe about a year or so into when my wife were in the Ark, we realized that most of our painkillers, they were sitting around, they'd expired. So, which I don't know, that doesn't happen very often because they usually have a long shelf life. So we just had to throw them out because we thought,
Yeah.
But
all right, and then I think this started after you came into the Ark. We started the Food Addiction Recovery Advocate training, the FARA training, which at that time we called the AMT, the Ark Manager training, but now it's the FARA training. What attracted you to go into that training, and what did you get out of it?
Well, I'm an educator, so when something came, here's a course on how you can learn how to help other people, I thought about the people that I knew in the Ark, who were the Ark managers and the people who were guiding the chat groups, and I thought, wow, I really like her. I really like the way she's helped us. I like the way she talks to other people, and I thought, I'm not like that. That's not my character to talk to people like that, just in general. And I thought that's something that would be interesting to me, to learn how to do that, and also to learn more about the addiction and more about recovery from processed food addiction. And I looked into it, and you and I spoke about it, and I spoke to a couple of the managers about what they were doing, and I thought, this sounds like something was interesting, and it wasn't rushed. I didn't have to complete it in 6 months, and I was able to take it at my own pace. So I thought, this would be a great opportunity to learn more about recovery here.
And what did you get out of it?
Well, I got more knowledge, more information about addiction and how the brain works, and the connection between the processed food addiction and brain chemistry, whether it's dopamine or all the brain chemicals that we have that affect the way we act and what we do. And it also helped me understand more that this is not my fault.
Yeah.
There are a lot of genetics involved here, a lot of the DNA, a lot of the way that our brains were developed or designed, or the way we evolved, that the brain is working the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to do
the natural adaptation to what's being done to it by the tobacco food industry.
Because the wrong inputs are going in, the brain is still doing what it's supposed to do. It's still using dopamine to get me to do things and to motivate me, but it's because it's been corrupted from the food that I'm having a problem with it. That it's not the food so much I need to worry about. I need to worry about how my brain is working, and my self-awareness, and how I can do things to manage stress. And that was a big thing for me, just learning how to manage stress. And I learned more about that when I'm going through training, because when I'm going through the training, part of it was listening to other members, listening to their check-ins, listening to what they were sharing. And I was listening for a different reason now. I was listening to understand more deeply what they were talking about. And that helped me learn more myself.
How interesting. Oh my gosh. Mike, nobody's ever put that. So one of the things that we teach a lot of is very careful listening, active listening. so that you can affirm a person in detail. We've been crushed by this. We've been made to feel very, very unimportant because we're failures and we have these body shapes, etc. So you learn to listen to another person, they feel important. But I never realized that you would also, for yourself, be learning at a much deeper level what goes on inside a person, and that would help you understand what's going on inside of you.
Yeah.
It's cool. I never thought of that. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yay. Yay. So, fast forward 3.5 years, you're here now. And what's your health profile? What's your emotional profile, your mental profile? Where are you today?
Well, the last I had, it was about 9 months or so ago. My wife and I had a complete workup at the hospital. It was our insurance covered it here, so we had all the tests done. I guess you'd call it an in-depth annual checkup, and every number I had, from blood pressure to blood sugar levels, everything fell within normal range.
Woo!
And for my family history and for my personal history, that was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Congratulations. Congratulations. We just looked at data coming out of Tufts. 93% of Americans have a diet-related diagnosis. 93.
Yeah.
It's another reason why we need to associate with each other online, is because otherwise our social drive, it's called social modeling, will kind of drag us into being like everybody else, which today it's sick. So, yay, you've escaped a lot. Yeah. What? Give me like your top three. If I make you, I don't make you do anything, but if I ask you for only three, what are the three that would make the list? Benefits.
Well, number one would be my relationship with my wife. Because a lot of what I've shared today and things that I've shared before with other people are things that she has told me. She said, "You know what? You don't do this anymore," or "I like how you're a bit calmer." And I'm not perfect. It's not like it's I haven't had a lobotomy, but it's that I'm able to stop and think. I know I'm getting upset. I know I'm getting angry about something, and it's okay. There's something going on. This really irritates me, and it's okay to be irritated with it. But I'm able to reason with it and say, okay, let's just be quiet. I'll deal with this later. I'll address this when I'm not as upset as I am right now. That would probably be the number one.
That's my number one.
Yeah,
I don't like from irritability.
I don't like the feeling of being out of control. That's.
I agree.
That would be my number one. My number two is my health, because I for the past 6 years I've been working in kindergartens here in China, and I'm constantly, I'm down on the floor, I'm up, I'm sitting on the floor, sitting on bean bags and whatever, and I wouldn't be able to do that 3 years ago. I just want to have the mobility and the ability to do that. Now it's because you have to, when you're working with students are from 3 to 6 years old, you've got to be able to do that, and because they want you to do it. But I can do that without people helping me up and down. It's
that's so cool.
So mobility is another one. And third, I had to say it's up there. We don't talk about it in the ARC because it's not the focus, but just the losing weight and keeping it off, and not having this up and down every year, every 6 months, and
having to think about it all the time.
And what I've learned to do is I've changed the way I eat. I've changed my food. I'm not on a diet. And that's what I've always done. I've always dieted to lose weight. I had to, do exact certain things a certain way, and that's how I lost weight. But now it's like, no, this is how I eat.
This is who I am.
Yeah, this is what we do.
Do you mind sharing how much you lost?
So far, it's slowed down after the first couple of years, but about 120 pounds so far. And
congratulations. It's a different life. You have use of your brain. Your emotions are where you want them to be. Your body is where you want it to be. And now from that platform, oh my gosh, you can just do lots and lots of fun things.
And now that's an estimate, because it took me, I guess, a little over 2 years to get rid of my scale. So I haven't weighed myself in about a year, and it was like the last time I went to the doctors, I got weighed. But
Okay.
so that was a battle. My wife gave up the scale pretty quick. That was easy for her, but I was still doing it once a month or so.
It's very addictive. The scale is very addictive. It's like an arbiter of our well-being. So we're kind of
And I
like,
wasn't ready to
what
give
would I
up.
do without this?
The nice thing was we moved apartments last year, and it was sitting out, and I saw it by the door where we had all the stuff stacked up to be moved, and I thought, all right, I can get rid of that. Let's just go put it in the recycle bin down in the basement at the apartment. So I kind of,
there's all kinds of freedom. There's all kinds of liberation in this program. All right, if you were going to close here in just a second, what if you were going to tell people one next step? What would the next step be?
for someone who has already joined the ARC, or for someone who's thinking about it?
Somebody, it's just any person listening to this. What would you suggest they do next? Anybody?
To anybody?
Anybody.
I would say, I would recommend they just investigate the ARC, find out what's being taught, what's going on here. I'm not saying join up right now, go sign up, because impulse is, for many of us with addiction in our history, impulses are not a good thing. So they usually lead us in a bad direction. Or we think it's a quick fix, but to
have a look.
Some of your videos, things that you've talked about, look at the science, the facts that are behind this and what's going on in real life, and say, this is not my fault. Let me look into this. Let me see what's going on here. And
thank you.
And just be aware that it's not a quick fix. It's not something that's going to happen this weekend, but it's.
Although sometimes people who are ready to immerse themselves, you can get very quick results. Your brain can start thinking very differently. It is that social modeling. It's having, models. It's having somebody to follow, that suddenly your brain will just click in. And it's different for every person. Some people need a year to start getting off the foods. Some people have done it in 24 or 48 hours, especially if they've done it before and they know what to do. Right. But Mike's right, foodaddictionreset.com. Take the self-quiz, and you will be invited to a free workshop. So we are very, very much about educating things like, this is not your fault. This is a business model. I have a Stanford MBA way in my background. I look at business models. I know what was done to us around cigarettes. They took the same strategies and they applied them to processed foods. So, yay, Mike, I love your story. I just am so grateful to know you and to have had you in the ARC for these 3.5 years. And yay, say hi to Michelle for me.
I will. Thank you.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming. And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate your interest. Tell the next person. You can walk the next person out of this processed food nightmare with what you learned today. See you next time.